this panel. For you all know, I'm 8-bit music theory. Did anyone come here not knowing what 8-bit music theory is? Oh, there are a couple. Wow, thank you. Well, there's a lot. Thank you so much. I'm flattered. Thanks for coming to check it out. So I'm going to talk about one specific Smash Bros. Tune. I was a little vague in my panel description, but we're going to be talking about the Super Smash Bros. Melee opening theme. And I defy anyone to think of a better opening cinematic in video game history. There are none. We're working with the best right here. It's very cool. This is going to be kind of like a live 8-bit music theory video if they were an hour long and very loose. But you know, we're gonna dig apart this music. I'll pull out some stuff that I think makes it sound the way it does, and you guys can decide if I'm right or totally off base. But first things first, we got to listen to the tune. We got to know what we're working with here. The best to ever do it. I love it. So I was watching this opening a lot to prepare for the panel, and I knew it was great, but I didn't realize how perfect it is. Just the visuals and the music are totally in sync, and then just I don't know, I wouldn't know where to start if I had to shoot or design an opening cinematic, because it's so abstract, It's just hype the player up for a minute and a half, and it just hypes you up for a minute and a half. And we're going to figure out why through music theory and logic. Okay, so first things first, we have a big intro, and that's with the big string run up. So I know, common musical wisdom is if you want to grow and get big and hype people up, you can't start huge because you need room to grow to. But Shogo Sakai said, wrong. You can start huge. But there's a few things that I think are interesting. First of all, it's very, very quick key changes. Kind of instantly. So we start on a big D flat chord. Was that mega loud for everybody else? Is that too quiet? This is a long room with a lot of people in the back. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay, so you hit D flat, and so for a second you're like, okay, we're in the key of D flat, and then we immediately move to. So you go, oh, okay. I thought we were in D flat. A little, okay. We're D flat-ish. D flat, sort of D flat. That would be a D flat Lydian chord. Because the E flat triad over top of the D flat bass note uses the characteristic sharp 11th of the scale. So that'd be a Lydian sound. Very bright. It's interesting that we're starting in a very bright tonal place. This is not like, spooky. Or like it's intense, but it's very energetic. Like Smash Bros. In general is very, like the aesthetic of it is very like, kick each other's ass. Mario's punching Pikachu in the face. But it's still Mario and Pikachu. It's not like Kratos coming in and ripping someone. But so you'll see throughout the opening music, we'll see where lots of bright colors, lots of strong harmonies, nothing like creepy, but also a lot of like intensity. So here the intensity is coming from the big high string trills and the very quick modulations. We go from a D flat Lydian E sound up a minor third to an E Lydian E sound. So we're like constantly moving up, out of the key into higher keys, which moving up in general musically builds intensity. That's one of those things that seems dumb. We're like, that's too simple, like moving up. But that's actually, that's actually true. And then, okay. We all recall, even if you muted the music, the opening cinematic would be so hype because Mario turns into a real boy and then starts fighting Link. But so we move up again, another minor third. So there's a pattern. We're going from D flat up to E, up to G. And then here we get, there's two, we're only in the fourth bar of music, but there's two techniques already that I want to like draw your attention to. And the first is just the cutout is so hype. Why? I don't know, but it is. Like, I guess a part of it is your expectation. If we're coming in so hot, and, and then all of a sudden cut out, you're left hanging. What's going on? Where'd it go? And then it comes back in like full throttle. And then, so we'll see another cutout later is why I bring it up. And then the second technique I want to draw your attention to is the stack of fourths figure. So I have this little melody that goes. Oh no, it doesn't do that. It just goes. But the held notes are the notes on beats 1 and 3. So we hold G, C, F, B flat, E flat, which you'll notice are all perfect fourths away from each other. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's called the super nerdy technical name is a quartal voicing. If you guys want to be super nerdy and technical. But I like to call it just a big stack of fourths, a big pile of them. And so fourths, I don't know, how into it are we going to get? How deep in it? How are we going Jacob Collier deep? Yeah. Okay, so Jacob Collier's theory of fourths and fifths are that fifths are major and fourths are minor. And fifths, they're yin and yang. They're two sides of the same whole. And if you stack fifths up from any note, say a G, and you go up a fifth, I should have got a sustained pedal, but you can feel how that does feel bright. And, I think of it as Breath of the Wild. That's the Breath of the Wild sound, right? just think. And you'll notice, so an interesting little fun fact is if you take a stack of fifths, perfect fifths, not worrying about the key signature, you just start D, up a fifth is, or start on G, sorry. Up a fifth is D, A, E, B, F sharp, and then even up to C sharp. Those 7 notes make the G Lydian scale. Like if you put them all in one octave, that's the sound we were talking about before from the opening 4 bars, and that's like typically asserted as being the brightest mode of all the major modes. That's the most major, I guess, even more major than the major scale. Now on the flip side, okay, so okay, cool, fifths, great, love it, Breath of the Wild. If you do the same thing, you start on G, and you go up in perfect fourths. Again, you're not worried about the key signature. You're just going perfect fourths up. So you go G, C, F. This looks familiar. E flat, E flat, A flat, D flat. If you take all of those notes, first of all, that sounds a lot more, a lot less like Breath of the Wild, a lot darker. A lot more harsh, I guess, is the word that comes to mind right now. But if you take all of those notes and put them all in the same octave, arrange them into a scale, you get that's the Locrian mode, which is typically seen as the darkest of all the major modes. And you can rank the major modes on a spectrum of the brightest being Lydian, and the darkest being Locrian. And so fourths are inherently intense and harsh and dark, and turn off on you when you don't want it to. Okay, here we go. But like anything in music, there's not just one thing that it sounds like, especially something as broad as the fourth interval. So the kind of natural, I like to think of it this way, like, whatever the musical technique is, has some sort of natural affinity to it. If you say fourths have a natural harshness and darkness, that natural harshness is being used by this piece to create anticipation, to create this build-up, this sense of like, oh, something's gonna happen. And like, it's like, something's gonna happen. Mario's gonna turn into a real boy and kick your ass. Oh, and so to prove my point, to emphasize my point, an example in the wild in video game music of perfect fourths stacking on top of each other like this, a very similar kind of thing, can be found in another opening cinematic, which you may recognize. Can you hear that okay? That's dark. That's harsh. But so it's the same thing. It's the same thing. The natural stacking fourths energy is that's Final Fantasy VI, is being used by Nobuo Uematsu to set the scene, the dark, stormy clouds, and the bad stuff is going to happen. But in Smash Bros, it's not. Don't do that. In Smash Bros, it's not used to quite the same effect. It's used as more of like a. Come on, there we go. No, okay. It's used to build up intensity that it resolves in like a fun, cool way, I guess. So we resolved to this big like, I don't know how. Should we listen to the piece again, the first 8 bars? Okay, let's listen to the piece again. And I want you to notice the building fourths, the stack of fourths, and how it resolves to this big, short C. And then there's like a timpani fill. Bow! Into that big, cool G chord. Okay. very cool. That cutoff, that break is so good too. Yeah. All right. Boom. So there's tons of rhythmic energy right away too. Da-da-ga-doo, pow. And now, so that I would consider the first section of the opening theme. And with that jazzy tritone sub D flat 9 chord. That brings us into the next section where we kind of meet the characters. So if you recall the cinematic, up until now it's been Mario getting chucked in the air and then turning into real Mario, and then him and Link facing off. And then now with that C minor 9 chord, we get this little montage of all the other characters in Smash Bros. Doing their thing. Donkey Kong running through the jungle, you know, that kind of stuff. And this is interesting because, I was also going to say, I forgot, but then I remembered. There's like a writ. The music slows down when it's building up those fourths. And that also helps build anticipation because it's like, what's... And that's another thing that kind of seems dumb where you're like, really, you know, that's not like a cool chord, but slowing down and speeding up that's huge. Those are huge techniques to have in your arsenal. That's okay. So anyway, moving on. This section, I want to talk here about the fact that this is like an orchestral piece. There's strings, there's harps, there's brass, there's timpani doing cool timpani stuff. But it's very jazz. The harmony is it borrows like a jazz approach to harmony, and not just a jazz approach to harmony, because it's not like, you know. But like a very specifically Japanese sensibility where I don't know what happened in Japan really, but they heard American jazz and they went, "Oh, I really dig 80% of it." And specifically, they really dig the extended chords, a C minor 9. So it's not just a little dinky C minor. You throw the B flat, the 7th in there, and the D, the 9th, and the clustery voicing. So by cluster I mean notes are really close together. That's a very, you know, jazz harmony is really built on putting clustery notes together in everything, anywhere you can. So that nice little D that's slipped in underneath the E flat in that C minor chord, beautiful. And then we get something that you would never hear in traditional American jazz, which is a C minor chord moving down to an A flat chord. I'd like to see someone try and play a concert on piano like this. But how deep are we going here today? Are we going note by note deep? Okay. You're my people. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So how many of you have experience with kind of like music theory class, the kind of typical, you're going to learn how to write a Bach chorale type of music theory class? Okay, most of you. Awesome. That's all about functional harmony, and specifically about like the history of functional harmony and kind of the birth of functional harmony. And in that scene, you know, like a foundational harmonic idea to know that you have to know is that voices want to move to other voices. And specifically, say you have a C minor chord, the way that you would resolve to that C minor chord is by having like a B that wants to resolve up to C, and having a G that wants to jump down to C. And having a D that wants to move up, or an F that wants to move down to the 3rd E flat. So you'd have, you know, all together. And that's super important. That's, you know, that's not outdated. That happens in all music all the time. But the thing that is that can be frustrating is that's kind of where theory classes end sometimes, is with that kind of stuff. And that idea has been expounded upon for, like 100 years. So more than 100 years. Composers since, for the last 400 years have been just like, how can I resolve the voices in different ways to get where I'm going? And so the cool thing about this is there's a sense of resolution to the A flat chord, even though like the bass movement, that's not like a strong movement. A strong movement would be like, that like bounces back and forth. This is kind of weak. But having the ninth in your C minor chord creates dissonance. And then that ninth moving down to almost the exact same chord. The only difference is the D moves down to C. It like breathes a little bit. You're like, oh, that resolves. And so even though this is not like a functionally, this doesn't resolve functionally in like a typical sense, you can see that, you can feel that it does, and you can see it's because of the voice leading. This is extremely technical, so sorry if any of you are like, okay. I love Mario, yeah. So moving on, we get, this C minor to A flat is setting up the new feel, the new groove. Very punchy. It's like simmering. We're not loud energy anymore. It's not. We did that, and then we did and then we had our jazzy. Not that. Whatever it was. Oh, that was it. And now we're simmering. It's it's like quiet, but then with those punches to wake you up a little bit. And like, the stuff's still coming. Don't worry. So once that's set up, we move into kind of the first real bit of melody in the piece, and there's something very cool about this piece of melody. You can probably all sing it. I'm not gonna make you. No. So good. So, does that sound familiar to anybody? It's the fourths. I just caught that like this morning. I was like, what the hell? If you look on beat one of each of these four bars, you're jumping up in fourths. And so you have this like motivic unity. It's a totally different, like we've been in all over the place. The music's jumping around every two bars to some new idea because of the nature of the, it's an opening cutscene, lots of quick cuts. You need to keep people on the toes, but it's getting all tied together through these different ideas. And then it moves back down. So we have our fourths up. And then we move down. Fifth. Fifth. A surprise C major. So one thing that you're going to see a lot in this piece is kind of surprise moves. Well, like at the beginning, we started in D flat, and then immediately we're like, nope, just kidding. Oh, no, just kidding, we're in G. So we're going to be changing keys a lot, because that fits with the video, cutting. Oh, now we're in outer space. Oh, now we're in the jungle. Oh, but one thing that I think is really interesting that I haven't really seen before, this seems like a technique specific to this opening theme, but it kind of calls its shots a little bit. Like it'll, say the next section here, after these 8 bars, we move to like an A sus thing. Kind of marchy A thing. Bum, 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 da, 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 da. I guess A minor type thing. But instead of like Okay, so if we're doing the Bach chorale thing, and you were in C minor, and you want to get to like A minor, you would do some kind of like, I don't know. You know, you'd set it up. You'd go, okay, you know, let's move to like, oh, I just thought of a way better way to do it. Doesn't matter. Like an E7 chord that just wants to go to A so bad, and then give it to them. And oh, thank you, Bach. That's great. But what this piece does a lot is it'll have, you know, okay, so in the next 8 bars will be a totally new harmony, and in the previous 8 bars, it'll just like sneak that harmony onto the end of the phrase. So we have like our surprise, we're in C major moment, our little. It's like, whoa, okay, what was that? And so it just kind of hits you out of nowhere with this A major chord, and then boom, we have this A. You don't know if it's major or minor off the top here because it's just whatever it is. Which, again, it's the same kind of 4th E figure. And this, it's changed a little more now. The other, you know, in this part, we took the 4th figure and just stretched it out to fit 4 bars. And here we're just doing 1 instead of a big stack. We're doing 1, and then moving on. So we called the shot, though. It anticipated the change to A, is what I was saying. Should we? Okay, we'll do this bar, then we'll go back, listen through the stuff we talked about, and then we'll keep going. But because this is just, you know, the exact same kind of thing that we heard in the beginning. The beginning, we start in D flat, Lydian, up a minor 3rd, to E, up a minor 3rd, to G. This is taking an idea in A, whatever, up a minor 3rd, to C. And then it doesn't go up a minor 3rd there, but it's, you know, this is kind of building up momentum again. That's called moving up a minor 3rd like that, like changing the key up a minor 3rd from whatever A to C to E flat. That's called a chromatic mediant. That's the technical, fancy, nerdy word for it. And that's like the film score thing. If you're trying to score a film, you just do that all the time. You can never do it too much. So let's see. So what do you want to focus on? You focus on, listen for the extended chords, the nice juicy 4-note voicings, and listen for the how it calls the shot to A. Instead of giving us a big, we do a little like, and then stick on A. Okay. I'm gonna skip ahead. Oh, this is my favorite part, I think. Come on, buddy. So we've been getting just smacked around for quite a bit at this point. We've been in like 10 different keys. We've been, man, I was worried about not having enough content. I'm not gonna have enough time. We've been in C minor. We've been in D flat. We've been in A. We've been back to C. We hit another, it anticipates the change again. Instead of going, you know, or something else, or whatever, moving anywhere else, it sticks on C for like an extra bar out of nowhere. So it kind of, again, like your expectations. It's when trying to analyze music, it's really helpful to kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like be thinking of what am I expecting listening to this. Yeah. And yeah, sure, participating. No, that's a great way to think about it. You're participating. You're not just letting the music, wash over you. You're like involved. Actually, with classical pieces, I find a lot of the time, if I don't know the piece, and you want to like listen to the whole thing without zoning out, which I find difficult sometimes, just like be trying to guess what's going to come next all the time. That keeps my head in it. Anyway, that's besides the point. But we've been doing everything in 4-bar phrases up till now. And now all of a sudden we get an extra bar, just to kind of, a little extra bar of space. We let it breathe for a minute. And then we get the beautiful string run up to Chic by the Lake playing the harp. And so this is a nice little change of pace. It's still, like, it's relaxed by Smash Bros. Opening standards. It's still pretty like fast and high, and there's still a lot going on. But compared to what we were just working with, it's like, oh, we're in the same key for like 4 whole bars. This is fantastic. And this is kind of the, again, talking about like how Japan took jazz and had its way with it. This is like the Japanese chord progression in all anime and all, Ghibli movies, everything. Like, again, let's do it again. So what it is, well, let's talk through it. It's in the key of C. It starts on an F chord, but that is starting on the 4 chord and kind of taking the long way back to C. So we talked about functional harmony and typical voice leading in progressions and stuff before, and this is just exactly that. It's circle of fifths, if you guys have heard that before, where the chords move in fourths, and that's how they want to move, and just like keeps the momentum going and takes you all the way home. So starting on the 4 chord, usually with like pretty major 7ths and 9ths and whatever else, and then moving to the same kind of Lydian chord we saw at the beginning, where it's a triad, a whole step above the root note. This time I would say, you could think of it both ways. You could think of it as an F Lydian chord, because it's got that bright F, F Lydian-y sound. Or you could think of it as like a G7 chord with the 7th in the bass. That would be the more Bach way to think about it, I guess. Because you could totally hear that wanting to go like, which is resolving to C with an E in the bass. Instead, we get an E in the bass and an E minor 7 chord on top. And then we do the circle of fifths thing. 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. We made it. Except it's pretty sus. We don't get that nice. We don't get the nice major one. We get. And then that's when. So I think we'll go back and listen to it in a sec. But that's when, like, we have Chic by the Lake playing the harp. I think Zelda's face appears in the moonlight in the sky or something. And the strings are all beautiful, and there's the harp. Do 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 do. That bottom line is harp. I don't know if it's totally right looking at it now, but it's something like that anyway. And but then when the C7 chord hits, we get shot into outer space, and that Star Fox flies in, and I think Kirby's flying on a star, and we're picking up speed again. We had a nice little break by the lake, and now we're gonna charge forward. And again, we see again it's calling its shot harmonically, because instead of the C7 sus chord jumping to an F chord, or moving up a minor third or whatever kind of movement you might expect it to do, it just stays on a C sus chord into the next bit. So what we're going to do, we're going to listen to the Sheik's part again. And for this part, just like bask in the beauty of the nice extended harmony and the orchestration being so nice. Hold on. When I play it, can everyone hear it? Yeah, kind of. In the back, it's iffy. I think it's just coming out of my laptop speakers, and I don't know what to do about that. So, but we're going to make do. Open up those ears. Here, we'll do this. Uh-oh. Bam, 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 bam. So sick, dude. Yeah. I should have thought of a better way to structure this, but okay. So good, right? And like the way it matches the visuals, like when the spaceships come in, you know, like when Kirby's flying in the star in the sky, and you're like, this still feels right. This is sweet, and Kirby's so cute. And then the lasers start shooting at you, get the big, you know. You're like, yes, let's go. Okay. So this gets very marchy all of a sudden. Timpani again. The timpanist must have just had a blast on this tune with the like at the beginning, and now this bing boom, bing boom. So good. Anyway, so I like this part because I like sus chords, I guess, is why. Like the we have the opposite of, so if you take a bass note, say D flat, and then you build a triad that's a whole step above. So E flat over a D flat. That's like a bright Lydian-y, major-y kind of sound. If you do a triad a whole step below instead of above, oh, it's like a totally different, it's a sus chordy sound. It's very sus. But it's like, because if you think of a sus chord, like if you're gonna play a sus chord, you could sit down and play this. That doesn't sound the same at all. Even like a dominant 7 sus 4 chord. Yeah, okay, let's have a like. It kind of sounds the same, but not quite. But when you have like, that's like, it's a very specific kind of like 70s funk sound that's how I hear it. But that's very specific voicing of the whole, the triad, major triad, and then the bass is a whole step up from where you'd think it would be. Or, you know, you can think of it the other way around. The bass is the root, really, functionally. Anyway, not to get too in the weeds. But so we get this cool figure, and then the timpani, and then we get it again, but this time it's getting filled up by, I think, strings. And so we're building anticipation again. We're you know, we had a nice time at the lake. Now we're going to charge forward towards the end. And here is where you do see that mentality of kind of, you start a little lower than you give yourself some headroom so that you can grow, because this is going to be a big, long, just like a straight build to the end. We're only going up from here, baby. So one way to build is to fill in more space and add more stuff. That seems self-explanatory, right? And then we have, and another way to build is to for the notes to go upward instead of downward. Yeah, I know, but so we have, you know, it's no coincidence that it doesn't go, you know, da ba da da da, ba ba da da da. Like that doesn't feel quite right. You gotta go up. So I love that. That's like another slash chord. I didn't mention this. Those are called slash chords. When you have like the F/G, that means F over top of a G note, like F triad over top of a G note, or E flat triad / over top of a D flat note, or whatever the case may be. I should have explained that much earlier. Sorry, my apologies. You all seem like, you've all been to theory class before. Hopefully you weren't too lost. But so that A flat over G, if we think of, a whole step above the root, whatever, being very pretty and Lydian and major and bright, and the whole step below being very sus, then the half step above, is just so dissonant and gross. And it's because you get that flat minor ninth interval between the root and the very, very gross, but also very cool, tasty. And especially like, we build up to this big G7 sus chord, and we get the fourth thing again. Just straight up. So this is building up, just like was foreshadowed at the beginning. Big fourth build up. But the sussiness of it, that's not enough tension, That will feel okay when it resolves. But if it's like, then it's like, thank you. So we get the big build up into the bum bum, and we don't resolve. We literally just hang there. Nothing, no sound. Another just break. And so if you think about if you had a buttholeometer that was just clenching and building up to this climax, and then you were going, here it comes. This is where it's gonna be. And then it was silent, But then you get a payoff because you get a literal explosion. And then fourths again, just fourth, or what is it? It's I see. It's fourth. There's a big string of fourths up, and then we get finally the resolution, Super Smash Brothers, and it's like that's the kind of final flourish. That's it's a really nice move. I really like that B flat minor over C. He's just because he gives you the resolution. We're not in the build phase anymore. Not the I can't take it anymore. We get it. We go, thank you. What? Oh, okay. It's just a little. There's such a sense of humor in this piece of all these. Anyway, yeah. So let's listen through to the end. And then I think we'll probably have time for a couple questions. And but okay, so we'll listen through the whole thing. And now you have all these different things that you can appreciate even harder about the coolest opening music in video game history. Let's go. Extremely cool. So we do have 10 minutes, I think. Yeah, 10 minutes left. Are there any questions? Oh, it's confirmed for 10 minutes. Yes, question.
So all of that is well and good, but what about the musical contribution from the explanations of Donkey Kong, Zelda, Yoshi, and
Wait, what do you mean?
So in the video,
Yeah.
Donkey Kong, Zelda, Yoshi, and Link all made their attack or taunt sounds.
Oh, I see. Yes. That's true. That would be 8-bit sound effect theory. Yeah. Are there any other questions? Yes. No worries.
So I wasn't interested in the classes, but could you go a little more? This sounds like something that is the whole bubble on there thing. Is that like something you get more into, like the higher? Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So the buttholeometer was that was designed by Richard Strauss. No, I'm afraid you will not find much talk about buttholes in higher music theory education. That's an 8-bit exclusive. Yeah. Yeah. But that's how it feels, right? I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Yes, in the orange.
All the repeated jazz scores that you played just reminded me of the Blue Shop channel and the
Yeah.
Closet.
Oh, totally. Yeah. That's all over that. Whatever it is. What is it? Something like that. I don't know. But yes.
Two things. One, what's your personal favorite piece from the Smash Brothers series?
Ooh. That's such a good question. What's my personal favorite piece from the Smash Brothers series? It might be the menu theme from Melee. The da 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 da. That's pretty sick. Yeah.
And number two, I wanted to say you got me the Chibi Robo, so thank you for that.
Oh yes, right. So good. It's unbelievable. The Chibi Robo music is unbelievably good. Funkmaster Flower Training, just like on repeat all day. Are there any other questions? Yes.
When you're presenting orchestral material like this, like, how do you decide how far down to reduce it? Like, so you do at different levels.
Yeah, that's kind of so the question was, when I transcribe, or have reductions of orchestral music where the full score would have like 200 staves, how do I choose how many staves to boil it down to, basically? And something like this where I had to transcribe by ear, I'm limited by what I could hear mostly. So it's kind of like I get the melody, get the bass line, I get any middle voices that I can hear relatively easily or that I like are obviously there. And then I try not to like think about it too hard past that. Like there's lots of stuff that didn't make it in there, but it's the amount of time it takes to transcribe an orchestral piece like grows exponentially the more you care about getting everything in the transcription. Yeah. But also because like even if you take an orchestral score, if you just go through and like cross out every line that's doubling another line, usually you only have like 3 things going on at once anyway. Like it usually can fit on a double staff pretty nicely. Not always, obviously. But something like this where it's not like everything's, the ensemble is always kind of together. There's not like, oh, and then there's a counterline, oh, and then there's an ostinato, oh, and there's all this stuff happening at once. But yeah, so I just, if it's getting to be more than 3 staves, I cut it off there. Like I don't want to try and fit 4 staves onto a screen on a YouTube video. That's annoying. 3, I make the middle one cue size to make it a little smaller. I can deal with 3. But any more than that, that's my limit. What time is it? All right, we got a couple more. Orange hoodie.
What's your favorite rearrangement or remix of a piece in Smash Brothers that's pulled from another game?
Ooh. I really like I mostly played Melee, as a kid. I played tons of Melee. So I don't know the other game soundtracks like super duper well, but the Melee Yoshi's story tune is so good. And you're like, or at least I thought like, oh, that's such a great tune. I'll go listen to the original version. And you realize that there's not really an original version. It's like he took all these snippets of melodies from all over the Yoshi Story soundtrack and like turned this banger out of them. So like, oh man, so that's impressive and just a banger.
Is there a particular song the thought of transcribing terrifies?
Any orchestral music really is kind of a pain in the ass. That's a good question. Like anything old is easy. Most like Super Nintendo and previous, you can find software that will isolate the voices, so it's like super easy. So that's super fun. And then, well, I don't know. There's kind of an interesting like. The question was, what piece of music would I be terrified to transcribe? Nothing specific comes to mind, but I will say that like, if you get to like PS1 era, where the quality is pretty rough, it's pretty muddy, it can be really hard to pick out voices. But you also kind of know like there's not going to be more than 8 voices going on probably. You know, I'm not super familiar with the PS1 hardware. But, you know, anything from that era, you know there's not going to be a full orchestra's worth of MIDI instruments. But then, you know, modern music tends to be way more orchestral and have way more sounds going on, and the sound design, like, plays into it, where you're like, oh, is that a flute or something else or a synth or a bunch of stuff blended together, you know? But then the audio quality is clearer, so it's easier to hear what's going on in some respects. So it's kind of, you know, pros and cons to a bunch of different types of music. Anything with an orchestra just scares me a little bit, you know. But you do what you can. You power through. Yes.
Any thoughts on how they lifted the melody that she's playing on the harp from Kirby? It's just a song from Kirby about a building.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that. Amazing. Oh, okay. Oh, cool. I didn't even realize that. That's awesome. Well, that's, you know, Sakurai made Kirby and obviously is fond of Kirby. Kirby's always like front center in Smash games and stuff, so like that seems appropriate. But I didn't know that. Cool. Thank you. Okay, should we do one more? Let's do one more question. If there is another question. Yes.
Yeah, so of all of you've looked at a lot of music for the channel, right? Of all of I'm sure you looked at a lot of different stuff. Of all the stuff you've looked at, which composer would you say like surprised or impressed you the most?
Ooh. That's a really good question. The question was, out of all the music I've looked at for the channel, which composer surprised me the most? Because there's a lot of composers that like, well, the Chibi Robo composer Hirofumi Taniguchi actually surprised me the most, literally, because the music just like goes off into left field all of a sudden, like everywhere. So that's not what you mean, I know. But talking like expectations versus reality. I was actually really resistant to doing a video on Hollow Knight for the longest time because the music was cool, but I don't know, for whatever reason, playing through the game, I was just like, oh yeah, this is cool. Like, nice, whatever, viola, melodies, awesome, vibey, cool. Maybe because it's like pretty atmospheric in the actual game. But then, you know, every video for months, every comment was, when are you gonna do Hollow Knight? I need some Hollow Knight. And so I was, you know, okay, I'll do a Hollow Knight video, and then listen to a soundtrack, and I was like, oh, that's kind of, what was that? And listen to it again. Like, oh, what? And I got super into it. And ended up making 3 videos on Hollow Knight because I was like pressured into listening to it. And like I totally had missed all the motivic stuff when just playing through the game. I think I must have been playing it with the music off for a lot of it, to be honest, because that's like I had it on Switch and it was a good just like I'm going somewhere game. Anyway, but so that one was like where I did a huge 360 on the music. So, Christopher Larkin, like you're the best. Sorry that I ever doubted you. But I thank you guys so much for coming and sticking around. And have a great rest of your MAGFest.